Greetings, everyone. It's an exciting day to be back for Wisdom Wednesday. That's where the education and outreach team here at CommonTime like to spend just a few minutes on your Wednesday evening for me, daytime for some of you others, maybe even morning for some, to give back in a way where we like to share information, share knowledge from our team in an effort to better support the arts educators in our community who are so important not only to us, but to their students and to the world. After a brief hiatus, once again, my name is Michael Skillern, and I'm the Education and Outreach Coordinator here at Common Time Online. And I am wearing my soccer jersey from the UAE, where I'm currently stationed. I don't know if stationed is the word, I'm not a soldier, but currently living and teaching in Dubai with my family. So let's get into it. Here's a brief review of what Common Time is. Common Time is your all inclusive home for arts education. We are a booking service connecting learners and individuals and educators just like you to world class professional artists across dance, drama, music, and visual arts, and also arts organizations through our purpose built video conferencing platform and scheduling, booking, and payment platform, all right here. In addition to live sessions, just like the one you're receiving now, that looks just like this, there are also pre recorded sessions, opera concerts, percussion recitals, woodwind trios, all types of events are happening right now at Common Time online. So let's get into it. This week, our topic of discussion is virtual professional development opportunities and the unique ability that those opportunities have to kind of democratize advancement in the education practice. Throughout the pandemic, we all know that a lot of those events were virtual. But what we have been seeing is that these type of virtual professional development events have continued to happen, even as most countries are starting to lift quarantines, lift certain mask mandates, and other types of restrictions that were preventing people from attending these type of professional development events. And the virtual nature of these events fits directly into our core mission here, which is to democratize access to arts education and democratize support for artists, educators, and arts organizations through the community that we're trying to build here at Common Time. So, with that being said, I think that virtual professional development opportunities for educators are very, very beneficial. I know that most of us may sometimes prefer in person settings versus the virtual component. But when you're looking at a teacher in the Philippines who is looking to receive education instruction, a lot of these types of events are centered in the West. You know, they're centered in Europe, they're centered in the United States. Oftentimes, there's a lot in Asia, but it just can be difficult and not really money conscious to attend these things. And learning, doing your professional development in that virtual way is a great way for you to expand your horizons, get kind of that cultural connection and learning from someone in a different culture, and maybe even interacting or getting an experience with someone that you may not have had the opportunity to get an experience from before. So I think that the virtual revolution, as I'll call it, that was sparked by the pandemic will definitely continue long after this is over with because people, especially educators, are learning to appreciate the newfound connectivity of their world. You know, the internet was has long been known as the great connector. We're able to contact people that live half the world away. But now that that concept has trickled into more interactive experiences, I think that these types of things will continue. So, professional development in a virtual space for educators, I think, is something that definitely needs to continue, especially as I travel the world and I live and work in places where these type of resources are not as accessible as they were to me. You know, for example, I grew up in Georgia, the United States, and they have a huge music education conference every year where there's also a huge theater one. I'm sure there are dance and visual art ones as well, but that was kind of not my world, so I didn't know too much about that. But they had these huge conferences every year that brought in local, statewide, and national experts on different topics to come in and speak to people. And these types of opportunities just don't exist everywhere in the world. So I do hope that virtual professional development opportunities for educators continue. And I hope and I know that Common Time will be a part of that. So, without further ado, that leads me into the second topic for today, which is to preview our upcoming Common Time Educator Summit. The CommonTime Educator Summit is our attempt to do just what we have been talking about over the past couple minutes to help democratize access to education, not only for our learners, but also for our educators. I'm thinking in this moment now of when I used to work in China, and there was kind of this idea that people who were educated in the West, they oftentimes in employment had a leg up on things, you know. But as the world is becoming more and more connected and there are more and more of these virtual and online opportunities, you're seeing an uptick of people being able to get this type of instruction in their homeland, to get this type of instruction right where they are. And I think that that is liberating. It's liberating because the children of the world need high quality educators, and no longer will high quality educators just come from the West. So that leads us in, like I said, to our next topic of discussion, which is going to be a preview for the Common Time Educator Summit, where you're going to be able to use this new liberating revolution of virtual professional development opportunities and other types of virtual opportunities to enhance your teaching and support the young company we all have grown to love called Common Time. So what I'm going to do is tell you a little bit about the Educator Summit and then take you through the 5 different events that we'll be hosting. So the Educator Summit is a one-day professional development event for educators that will take place across 5 different sessions throughout that day. We have sessions coming from the US, sessions coming from Germany, sessions coming from the Middle East, and a session coming from Slovakia that are all aimed at better supporting the arts educators in our community. So let's break it down and let's see what we've got. Okay, I'm going to quickly share my screen. It's giving me a permission here that I've got to allow. Click the lock to make changes. Boom, 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 boom. Okay. Let's take a look at what our Common Time Educator Summit looks like. So, when you come over to the Common Time online homepage, like we see here, okay, then you click on events at the very top. Wow, right there, front and center is the Common Time Educator Summit, April 30th. I'm going to go over and click view details. And then we see the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sessions we have. So what I would like to do is go down one by one, break down what each one of these sessions is going to be like based on the description from the host or presenter. And then I'll leave you with that. So, first session up is hosted by yours truly. And in this picture, I'm wearing a little bit nicer clothes than the soccer jersey I've got on now. But this session is titled Differentiation in the Arts Classroom. I have the pleasure of studying in a 3-day summit with Tanya Latanzio about the true meaning of differentiation, what it is and what it's not, the 8 different ways to differentiate instruction, some different methods to institute these types of differentiation, some tips on inquiry, things like problem finding, using challenges in your room. And just to give you a quick example, when you use a challenge in differentiation, there are multiple ways to complete that challenge. And you also are encouraging students to think about their content or their concept in a way that makes sense to them. So, for example, a challenge in the music room could be, let's say we're rehearsing some song, and I ask for a challenge, where I say, I want you to tell me every time while we're rehearsing this piece, I want you to take a note, and I challenge you to write 3 comments about another section. So if you play clarinet, for example, maybe you would write 3 comments about the flutes. And I challenge you to write 3 comments that are productive and can help them. Then at the end of that class, maybe as a ticket out the door, I take the papers that have those comments written on them. So what this challenge is actually doing is you're engaging your students as listeners. You're putting some of the control of the class in their hands by allowing them to give feedback. But also, you didn't tell your students what section to listen to. You didn't tell what to comment on. So your students are engaging themselves in a way that's differentiated from them and going into the 8 different types of differentiation. At that point, you're differentiating content. Each student is going to be choosing something different to listen to. You're also differentiating based on experience. Each student is going to have a different experience being listening to different areas. And also, the students that are playing are going to have a different experience when they tackle what it feels like to be actively listened to by their peers. You know, in the US music standards, and most of them, giving and receiving critical feedback is one of the standards that we have to hit. And that creates an experience as well. Some may call it even a pressure. We'll be talking about the arts class of the first job. That is possible through grasp task, where you give your students a goal and a role. So no longer are your 5th grade students just 5th graders. They are now professional musicians that are preparing a concert for an audience. So now music becomes their first job in a way. We talk about voice and choice, which is another method for differentiation, allowing your students to say, and it could be something as simple as, we have to rehearse song number 1, song number 2, and song number 3 today. Let's take a vote as to which song we should rehearse first. Another way voice and choice works is, in one of my classes, we're singing a song called Ducky Duddles. We sing it once with body movements, we sing it once with shakers, and we sing it once with drums. I often will choose one student and allow them to make their own arrangement of the piece by choosing the order in which we perform the song. Voice and choice, and I'm giving that particular student a differentiated experience based on the experience, based on the product is differentiated now, things like that. And we'll also talk about the teaching cycle, which is something I learned from Robert Duke, which in simple terms is a teacher instruction, a student response, teacher or student feedback, and then a repeat of the same student response from before, hopefully better. And here is the event page for that. As always, you must sign up for a CommonTime membership first. Joining CommonTime is free. You can sign up as an educator or an individual or an artist. Then you come down here, you add this event to your cart. All of our events are priced at just $5. Then you check out. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy, just like that. All right, let's take a look at the next session that's going to be on our Educator Summit. The next, and I'm not listing these in time order. These are actually, I am listing them in time order because they appear for me in chronological order. So the second session of the day is teaching theater through improv. And this one goes out to all of the drama teachers out there worldwide. This session is led by Han Chong, who is Malaysian in heritage, but currently living in Bratislava, Slovakia, where he runs an improv theater center called Funnylicious, where they do different types of performances, activities, and classes geared at getting adults and children more comfortable with improvising. In Han Chong's words, this class is meant for people that need help using improvisation in their drama classes, people that are maybe afraid of adding improv to their syllabus, and people that want to do more improvisation in the classroom but don't know where to start. I think that in the performing arts, especially, improvisation as a means of education is an invaluable tool for educators to learn. Let me tell you why. If you're teaching in the UK, the IB, the British, or the Canadian education frameworks, there is a part there called creation. And improvisation is, I don't want to say the easiest, but it's one of the more intuitive forms of creation. And coming from the music world, as students get older, maybe you can divulge into actually composing written music. But improvisation is one of the most intuitive ways that you can get your students evolved from a creation standpoint in your material. Okay, Han describes the topics to be covered as the benefits of teaching theater through improv, developing your acting skills through improv, important tips for teaching improv for drama teachers, and improv facilitating skills for drama teachers. And then he's going to have a short Q&A afterwards. If you remember when I was talking about differentiation, there's something I'm going to be talking about there called the inquiry cycle. And I don't remember it perfectly offhand, or the stages of inquiry, rather. That's what I like to use versus the cycle. But you have these structured types of inquiry where you go, actually, I'll just Google it real quick so that I don't misspeak. Okay, so you start with a structured inquiry, which is where students are following the lead of the teacher and the entire class engages in one inquiry together. And you progress all the way down to free inquiry, where students are choosing their topics without any reference to anything and with little to no guidance from the educator. Using improvisation in free creation and design in your visual art, dance, drama, or music classes, to me, has been one of the most intuitive ways for you to actually have inquiry in your classroom. So even if you are not a drama teacher, if you are interested in having more inquiry, that's one of those buzzwords that gets dropped down on the heads of us educators. Improvisation and free creation in your classes is one way that you can do that, and Han Chong is going to be talking about that in great detail. As always, you must be a CommonTime member to access this content, but sign up is free and it only takes a couple minutes. You can register as an individual or an educator. Then you click on the events tab, like we talked about, click on the Educator Summit, add to cart, then check out. Just that easy. And let's keep going. The next session on April 30th is hosted by our founder, Christine Matovich, who is a music teacher at International School Stuttgart out in Germany. And her session is titled Embrace All Languages and Cultures in Your Performing Arts. This topic is one that's near and dear to my heart. because I began my international teaching journey, was it 5 years ago now? And in the United States, there are often many areas with diverse communities, but you are many times dealing with students who, in my opinion, are often more alike than they are different. Maybe there are some students who are bilingual. Maybe there are students of different races and different nationalities. But in the United States, I rarely dealt with a group of students where a third of the class was from another hemisphere than the others. A fourth of the class is learning English, you know, and there are some teachers in the United States who are maybe disagree with me. Maybe their classes are like this, but this was something new to me when I moved to China, and we had students from Hong Kong who spoke English but not Mandarin. We had students from Korea who were low English level and low Mandarin level and had a hard time communicating with anyone that wasn't Korean as well. And we had clashing cultures. We had students from Indonesia, students of all different types of religion. And we had that clash of culture, that clash of language. But educators, we are often highly concerned with language, and international schools are mostly set on turning all of the students into English language learners. But there is this funny sitcom called Modern Family, and I was watching it the other day, and one of the characters is Hispanic, and she is English as a second language person, and she was saying to her husband, "You always treat me like I'm stupid. You have no idea how smart I am in Spanish." And that is so true. Oftentimes, in an international school setting, we have no idea how smart our students are in Mandarin. We have no idea how smart they are when they're speaking Arabic, like in my case in the UAE. So being able to trans language and being able not only to tolerate but appreciate the use of multiple languages in your classrooms is paramount. Is paramount. Learning English is oftentimes very important for international schools, but learning your content and learning your concepts are also equally as important, and those ideas exist outside of language. Chemistry is chemistry, even if you're speaking Urdu. So, Christine describes here that the performing arts are one of the most transparent subjects in any school. In an international school, especially, they should clearly represent intercultural understandings, diversity, and the celebration of multiple languages and language learners. In Christine's workshop, you'll be looking at ways to move out of your comfort zone from what's familiar to you as an educator and move into what is unique and familiar to your students, giving us all an opportunity to embrace better cultural understandings. Um, are you appreciating and actually using your class's local heritage as a means to deliver your content? Something recently that I had done is that in my band program, I tried to start off my percussionists with the traditional route, playing snare drum, playing glockenspiel. But my eighth grade boy percussionists were just not into it. They just weren't. And they said that when they signed up for percussion, they didn't think it would be like that. And it made me think. Their idea of percussion is hand drums and playing the reek, which is a small tambourine, or playing the daf, which is a large type of frame drum. That's their idea for percussion, not triangle and tambourine. So I started to do something new. We still learn to read rhythms. They still accompany our band, maybe playing snare drum parts or bass drum parts using our collection of hand drums. But during our warm-ups, I've given them a unique task of leading our warm-ups with a nice rhythm or backbeat. And I will sometimes send them to another area of the class and say, "Hey, you need to bring me back a rhythm. You have 1 minute." And then while we're playing, ta, our long tones and band, they will be giving a doom, 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 doom. They will be using these rhythms from their homeland to actually support us. That way, they're still playing drums, they're still learning rhythm, they're using their cultural heritage to participate. And we get that combination of Western music education through band and Arabic music through percussion that we're combining to make something homogeneous, which, in my opinion, is the point of international schools. Christine's going to be talking all about this. And I think that oftentimes when professional development opportunities like this are not democratized and they are married to one region and to one type of teaching, you miss out on the opportunities to learn about things that are really, really important to you. I wanted you to look back at some of the professional developments that you have attended recently and how many of them are providing you the opportunity to learn how to not only engage your students better, but allow them to engage you better through a mutual cultural understanding. This is why I believe that this new virtual revolution in our world is going to ultimately benefit educators and learners alike in really giving an opportunity for some of these topics to be brought to light. You know, at some of the big educational conferences, maybe there's, quote, more important matters than the ones we're going to discuss here, but Common Time is for everyone. As always, you must be a CommonTime member. It takes only 2 minutes. And once you go to commontime.online, right up here in the right hand corner, upper right, it's going to say sign up. You just need your name, your email. I think maybe it asks for your location, simple things like that. Then you'll have an account. Then come over to the events page and book it here. Once again, only $5. Unfortunately, all of our prices are listed in USD currently because of the payment system that we're using. We're working to have the currency translate per location, just like our times listed are. So you're going to see these times in your time zone, which is why I'm focusing more on the date of April 30th and not the time, because whoever's listening to this, maybe your times are going to be different from the ones that I see. And I don't want to have any confusion. All right, that's 3 of the sessions, and we're at halftime. So maybe we'll take a little bit of a break. And I want to talk to you all about a virtual professional development experience that I had. So I was making Facebook posts because I'm a nerd. I was making Facebook posts about differentiation one day. And I had a band director who's actually a friend of mine in Atlanta, Georgia, reach out to me via Facebook and say, hey, my school district, the music teachers are really, really interested in this topic of differentiation, especially in the ensemble setting. And by ensemble, um, band, orchestra, and choir, or maybe even like rock bands, jazz bands. And many teachers find differentiation difficult in those settings because the end product is always homogeneous. Like we're all playing song number two, we're all playing it. There's not always many opportunities for students to do work that has different products. And likewise, we always have concerts coming up. Your average American school band program is going to have 1 to 2 concerts before the winter break, which traditionally splits the year. Then they're going to have some type of festival or evaluation in the first quarter of the new year. And then they're going to have some end of the year concerts and events. So focusing on differentiation can be difficult. But when you look at differentiation the way that I explain it, the fact that you can differentiate by location, you can move your rehearsal space. You can have sectionals. You can differentiate by student collaboration. You can use sectionals in your classes. You can differentiate by experience. Maybe you do a silent rehearsal, or maybe you do a visual rehearsal with just written instructions. You can differentiate by content, by the music that you're selecting? Are you giving your students a list of 20 pieces and taking a vote for what you should play? Are you using voice and choice to differentiate your learning? Um, are you are you using concept-based learning in your classes as a means to differentiate your student experiences? The goal is for us to teach identity. Every student's identity is different. So when you're teaching music through that lens of we're talking about our identity, you open up the opportunity for students to differentiate their own learning. And they asked me to come in and give this presentation to them. Now, was this important to the conversation we're having now? It's important because, especially in the arts, oftentimes we assume that the arts are differentiated because the students are having their own ethereal arts experiences. That's not necessarily true. You have to be intentional about it. But in a lot of the professional development opportunities that are targeted towards arts teachers, they're all focused on content. How to make your students sing better, how to make your students play better, how to help your students read music better, how to help your students create better stage settings, how to help your students blah, 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 do all of these things better. They're always content based, and there are not many arts focused professional development opportunities that are geared towards larger educational ideologies outside of just content. But through this virtual revolution that we're experiencing and all the new opportunities that have risen up for us to take part in, a lot of these topics are being brought to the forefront, and teachers and students alike are getting exposed to new educational opportunities that before were not given to them, whether it was because of time constraints, because of money constraints, because of location constraints. And that's why I think that this is so enlightening and has such a great opportunity for people to expand their knowledge. So that's another 2 cents for me on the benefits of professional development in a virtual space. Another topic I'll bring up before we move on to the rest of our Educator Summit is this idea of a pen pal. In another Common Time initiative that we're going to be pushing soon, we're going to be encouraging educators in our community to establish pen pal relationships with students in other countries, other regions of the world. And this is important because I personally believe that cultural understanding teachers, attorneys, parents, complete outlook on educators. And we're expecting for the and I think that that is how you cultural export that is unique to only them. If you want to, if you want to learn, if you want to see the pyramids, you've got to go to Egypt. If you want to learn about um, if you want to learn about Hinduism, you've got to go to India. If you want to learn about the Indian Carnatic music, you've got to go to India. If you want to learn about native ice fishing traditions, you've got to go to the Arctic. If you want to learn about didgeridoo, correctly, you've got to go to Australia, on and on and on. And his work has been with helping these developing nations take advantage of their cultural tourism and their cultural export, letting them know that they are, in fact, not poor, but they're actually rich in culture, rich in wisdom, and rich in history that the rest of the world reads about all day in books. That means they'll come see it too. So I think that his work is really, really inspiring and helping these cultures. And I hate to go on tangents, but that brings me to another idea where I was reading an article about the Chinese government, and one method that they did to end poverty is through the invention of TikTok. They tried to use TikTok and increase access to the internet in some of these villages and more kind of, we call it the country in the US, but more, what do you say, like more rural areas. They started giving them internet, giving them phones, and giving them access to TikTok as a way to boost cultural tourism. Because all of the temples, the steppes of Asia, the different cultural experiences, the different people, China is so large. And when you get into the part of China that goes into Central Asia, you get that mix of the different cultures that came along the Silk Road and are now within China. And through the internet and through TikTok, they were able to revitalize entire provinces through cultural tourism by giving them infrastructure and transportation and internet. The rest of the world was able to see, like, wow, look at this tribe and look at this community. We never even heard about this, and we live in Beijing. So that cultural economy is super real. And Patrick is going to be giving you a session that, especially for Americans out there, and Patrick's currently living in America, and for everyone that's on the internet, is super important. And it's titled Arts Education in an Age of Misinformation and Disinformation. This is something that I think is super important for educators, especially as we teach young students how to research, how to critically think, and how to form their own ideas. And coming through the pandemic, there's been so much talk about disinformation and misinformation. And the fact that we can't agree on facts has made it difficult to make progress in many countries. In this session, Patrick is going to consider how seeing the world through the lens of the arts can help us deal with misinformation and disinformation. By doing so, and by examining how to evaluate information and how to deal with issues like stolen focus as lifelong students of the arts, in the age of information overload coupled with fake news, observing our society through arts inspired learning may be what we need to make sense of our world. And I think that idea of stolen focus is so important for our young people with the amount of technology and information they have at their hands. Students don't have the opportunity to wonder, the opportunity to be bored, that opportunity to experiment with their ideas and just kind of be lost in thought. And I think that that lack of those opportunities has built up this kind of stolen focus where when we're scrolling on our phones or we're clicking through our computers, we're kind of in a vegetative state, just receiving information, going on to the next thing. But through the type of focus that arts learning requires, maybe we can retrain our brains and our students' brains to appreciate detail, to appreciate focus, to appreciate the idea of deep critical thought without jumping on to the next idea. And that way, when you look from a misinformation and a disinformation standpoint, us and our students will move from headlines to critical details. We'll move from opinion to facts, and we'll move from opinion to fact. Yeah. I just heard someone say the other day that 99% of news oftentimes are opinion pieces. You know, you don't get to just hear what happened over there. All right. And now we're moving on to the last, but not least, and arguably one of the more important sessions of the Educator Summit, which is being hosted by the wonderful Dr. Ann Renee Joseph, who is out in the Pacific Northwest of the United States. And her session is titled Arts Advocacy. She sells seashells by the seashore. I should have warmed up those vocal cords. Arts advocacy, visionary leadership and advocacy in action from around the world. Before I get into her words on this session, oftentimes when schools have to make budget cuts, the arts are the ones that go first. Dr. Ann Renee is a longtime educator, but she also worked in her local and state governments as an arts administrator. She has held positions with the governor of her state, advocating for arts education and advocating for why arts education is not extra, it's not supplementary, it's not exploratory, it's not a special. It's got to be a core part of building a whole student, a core part of every student's education. I heard someone say that chemistry, physics, science, math, reading can give you the what. It tells you what the world is, but the arts give you your why. That is why architects design buildings and engineers don't. Engineers do the what, architects do the why. That's a good example I just came up with on the spot. Take my favorite hand, pat myself on the back. Okay. In her own words, Dr. Ann Renee says, in arts education, a part of the basic education for all children or students in your community, state, nation, or county or province. If so, do all students have access to high quality arts education during the school day, before or after the school day? Does your country or your province or your state have laws, policies, resources, professional development, funding, and certified or subject endorsed teachers teaching these subjects? Are students in arts education classes allowed to practice and perform in different settings? Okay, and she's going to explore those topics via images of arts education during the COVID era, videos of how school districts can advocate for arts education, a conversational interview with a state education official and arts advocate regarding different laws, policies, partnerships, and resources that can support the arts education, and a resource sheet along with a Q&A. This session is so important for educators that feel like the arts are being undervalued in your setting, in your community, in your country. CommonTime has been working with a foundation called the Global Schools Forum, which supports about 30,000 schools in rural and underserved areas across the Southern Hemisphere. And the reason we're working with them is because, you know, and I definitely understand, but if you can imagine, if you're working in a setting where books are hard to come by, where time of children being able to go to school and not work is hard to come by. You're going to want to focus on skills that you consider hard skills like math, literacy. And I totally understand that. But we know that the arts have to be an integral part of the entire student's experience. And we've been working with them not only to provide arts lessons across music, dance, drama, and visual arts for those students, but also to help advocate for them, advocate to the people they fundraise to, and advocate to other organizations that when you're supporting underserved communities' educational efforts, how can you not add the arts to it? How can you not? And then, of course, our idea of a lot of countries in Africa, in India, in the Caribbean, if you've been to any of these areas, you know how important dance, art, clothing, and culture are to these people. How can you say you're helping them and not include that in their learning? How is that possible? And that's why I'm glad that the GSF is working with us. And if you feel like your community is not valuing the arts properly, then this session with Anne Renee is the session for you. As always, you've got to sign up for Common Time Online. You can do that by going to commontime.online, clicking on the sign up button that will appear here, filling in about 2 minutes worth of info, then coming back and booking this session for only $5. Once again, the CommonTime Educator Summit is happening all day on April 30th. And if you book all 5 of these events, if you have all 5 of these events in your carts, you will receive a 30% discount. Once again, if you have all 5 events in your cart, don't check out yet. But once you have all 5 events in your cart, you will automatically receive a 30% discount. Thank you for my humble return as the maestro of the Wisdom Wednesdays. Until next week, we can't wait to see you at our April 30th Educator Summit.